So here we go, England's autumn gets underway this weekend, as does the All Blacks Northern Tour. They meet at Twickenham and I can't wait for the match. I'm going to be there as well, so I'm previewing it in this video, also talking about the Haka after Joe Marler caused quite a storm. But welcome back to the channel. Put your comment down below. When you think about the preview ahead of this game, what stands out to you? And also, who do you think is going to win it? Massive game for both of these sides. Whilst you're here, like the video and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing on the channel. So, I'm going to start off with the Haka stuff. I'll get into the game itself in just a moment because it's been a massive story this week. I would imagine if you've clicked on this video and you're watching this video, you're already a rugby fan, so you're already in circles, whether it be on social media or whether it be with your mates, that you speak about this sort of thing when it comes up. But I've had a lot of people this week who aren't rugby fans who saw this story and who got engaged in this story because it's about the Haka. And even if you don't know much about rugby, you know about the Haka. So this is what Marler said. These were his first tweets. There have been a few. I'll flash them up on the screen for you. And there was a big backlash to this. He took down his Twitter account for a bit before reinstating it, and then he went on to clarify his comments. I think the first part of that tweet where he called it to be binned was quite inflammatory language and was always going to have a big backlash and poorly worded. And I think Scott Robertson said something similar with his press stuff. It's a poorly worded first tweet. I think once you get past that, and particularly once Marler put out a few more tweets to actually describe what he meant, there's a wider discussion here about, I think, how the Haka can be, that whole spectacle of the Haka can be improved essentially for everyone. So first up, straight out the gate, let me say, you don't ban the Haka. It's got obvious cultural significance to New Zealanders and to the Maori culture, which I'm not going to go in here because there'll be plenty of you watching this that have a far better understanding than me, but I have an appreciation of that. But also it has a huge cultural significance to rugby as well, as I've just mentioned, for people that aren't rugby fans, that know what it is, that get engaged in it. But can we make it a better spectacle? And I think ultimately this is what Marler was driving at. And in some of the tweets he's put out since then, he's essentially said that. He said he didn't actually want it to be banned. He was highlighting the fact that really teams can't challenge it. And it's off the back of the Rugby League. England played Samoa at the weekend. Samoa did their traditional war dance beforehand, and the two teams came face to face, and it was brilliant. You might have seen it circulated on social media. It was a great moment. But World Rugby has these, what I think are pretty archaic laws to prevent that. Now, teams in Union can respond to it, but they can't get closer than 10 metres away from the All Blacks or from any team doing the Haka. If you remember England and they did that V formation in the World Cup semi-final in 2019, Marler and a few other players stepped over the halfway line. The RFU actually got fined for that. £20,000 fine just for stepping over the halfway line. I think World Rugby here needs to act and say, do you know what, we've got this. We've got this amazing part of the game, which is really important for a whole number of different reasons, but how can we make it even better in terms of the fans? Get rid of the cameramen in the middle between the two teams. Allow the teams to respond. Allow them to come face to face. It's going to be really interesting to see if England respond this weekend. I was up at their media stuff yesterday. I kind of asked Jamie George, not exactly are you going to respond, but I could tell he was pretty guarded. He said they were having discussions about it, so we'll wait and see. What I can guarantee, though, is I think the Haka will be pretty blockbuster this weekend now, potentially. I hope so anyway, off the back of all these comments and all this discussion. So let me know what you make of it. As I say, overall, there's no way I think you get rid of the Haka. I think that would be crazy. I think it's got a really important part for a number of different reasons. But I think World Rugby maybe needs to have a little look at it here and say, what is the rules of people not being able to get closer than 10 metres actually serving? And could we encourage teams more to respond to it and respond to that challenge, which I quite like. I also don't really buy the argument that it's a sporting advantage because the opposition have to stand there whilst the New Zealand team go through their Haka. I don't really see that at all as a valid argument of giving them some sort of sporting advantage. But you can let me know in the comments. Let's get on to the game itself. I want to start with England because I've spoken about it already this week in the other videos I've done of how significant this autumn is for England. They've played 8, they've won 4, they've lost 4, they have had improving performances, but it's all being propped up by that win against Ireland in the Six Nations. Narrow defeats in the 2 tests against New Zealand in our summer, and a narrow defeat at the end of the Six Nations to France. All 3 games they could have won, but didn't. This is a massive autumn for England. I think they have to start well. I think if they start well, it engages the crowd, it completely changes the atmosphere. We know what Twickenham is like. When England are playing poorly and not really giving them much to get behind, it can be quite flat. When they're playing well, when it's an engaging game, like that Ireland game, by the way, because I was lucky to be there for that one as well, it is a brilliant place to watch rugby, and the atmosphere is genuinely brilliant. It's one of those strange stadiums that can kind of fluctuate. I think they have to start well. They can't allow New Zealand to have a comfortable start to this game. And I suppose the big question really when I look at England this autumn is how much have they changed from those summer tours to now? Is it a continuation of what they were doing, or have they tweaked things, have they changed things? In particular in the context of not losing Felix Jones fully, but Felix Jones taking a step back and working away from the camp almost as a glorified analyst. Joel Abd coming in as defence coach. They've lost the S&C coach as well. There have been changes in that regard. What do England look like, and what does their game plan look like, which has developed a lot this season already, if you think back to what we witnessed at the start of the Six Nations to where they were at the end of the summer tour. Far more aggressive defensively, far more dynamic and dangerous in attack. What does the England game plan look like? How has it developed? And speaking of developing and development, the next part of their development is winning close games. I mentioned those ones that they've lost already. That's the next challenge for this team, really. And it's fine margins, right? They've been close to having 3 massive wins in that game against France and the 2 against New Zealand, but they've lost them. It's fine margins, but it's a big leap. And I think that's where this team is now. Show us that you can beat the best teams. Because traditionally, in recent years, England-New Zealand games have been tight. They've been close affairs. New Zealand's record recently at Twickenham hasn't been the best either. So I think there's an opportunity for England. Can they see it out? In terms of the team stuff, I spoke about this in a bit more detail when I did my reaction to the England team on Tuesday. Ben Spencer at 9 is massive. His first start for England. He's got like 6 caps over 6 years. Has never really been able to break into the team. His form in the Premiership has been excellent. Him and Marcus Smith as the halfbacks have a key role in this game. And I suppose Spencer's inclusion does say something in that it's not Jack Van Portfleet. He's not on the matchday 23. And Harry Randall is on the bench. Spencer is a more controlling 9. Box kicking, that sort of thing. He has an all-round game as well. We see him make little snipes around the fringes and throw dummies and inject pace into the game. I'm not saying he doesn't bring that at all, but I think out of all 3 9s in the England camp, he is the one that brings you more control. Does that tell us something about how England are looking to approach this? Henry Slade in the centres is the other one, partly because of how important that outside centre channel is for you defensively, but also because he hasn't played. But they want continuity there in that he continues with Ollie Lawrence. So how that looks and how he looks, I think is going to be fascinating. And then the big thing, the final thing I'll mention on England is the bench, because those 2 games against New Zealand in the summer, they lost it in the final quarter. The bench had an impact. Beauden Barrett in particular, I remember coming on and having as good an impact as you could see from a replacement really in, I think it was the first test. The bench is going to be important, and that's the one area with England that I maybe look at slightly with a little bit of concern. Because of the injuries of Chesham not being there, he would have started, which I think would have meant Cunningham South possibly, or Martin would have then been on the bench. Bench impact is key for England. Let's get on to New Zealand though. This is the team that they named on Thursday. So I find it hilarious with New Zealand because there is this perception that this is a weaker All Blacks team. And on the one hand, that is right. I think their results will tell us that. They lost the games against South Africa. They lost against Argentina. They were pushed close by England. This isn't as dominant a New Zealand team as we've seen previously. It's a, in inverted commas, weak New Zealand team. And then they go and name this side. And it is, I think it's pretty much as strong as it could be, isn't it? All Blacks fans, you can let me know about that one. But I don't really see any weak links there. I suppose the caveat to all this, which I've hinted at just now in terms of their results this year, is it is an All Blacks team that is still growing. It looks great on paper, but are they still kind of finding out what sort of team they are? New coach this year, Scott Robertson, players leaving, etc., etc. What I do love, I love the 9 combination, Cortez Ratimer and Cam Roygaard. I was so impressed with Cam Roygaard from what I saw with him in France last year at the World Cup. I thought he was brilliant. Ratimer, likewise, is a prospect that I'm excited to see more of. So I love the 9 combination they've got there. And then Wallace Satiti at 6. You hear nothing but super positive things about this guy. And in fact, him against Chandler Cunningham himself, I know it's not like for like, is it, when you're kind of both 6s, because the field spreads out so much, and it's not like it's not like you're a prop going up against the prop. But the 2 6s, I think, is an awesome battle. And Wallace Satiti is a player that you hear so many positive things about, so much excitement in New Zealand about his potential and what sort of player he could grow into. But overall, as I say, it is a New Zealand team which still has a lot of quality there. It still has experience, and on paper, particularly given the fact that we think of the All Blacks of not being in that strong a position at the moment, that is a strong 23. They're 2 strong 23s, actually, and I think that they're 2 sides that are pretty well matched up. Predict this game at your peril. I think it's going to be close. And as I say, I'm going to be at Twickenham. I cannot wait for it. So what do you make of it? What do you make of these 2 teams? Where is this game going to be won and lost? Is it going to be the bench again? Are those England replacements going to have a more positive impact than they did when they met in New Zealand? Can this England team get a really notable scalp? And this New Zealand team, by the way, that England played in the summer, I suppose are a very different team to what they were then. That's one of the strange elements of this game. England are trying to pick up and build on where they left off. New Zealand have played loads of games. They've had a whole Rugby Championship campaign since then. So it's maybe going to be quite a different looking All Blacks team. Do you know what? I don't often do predictions because it's a bit of a fool's errand. And as I've already said with this game, I think it's really, really tough to be able to predict it. I do fancy England for some reason. I think coming back home, they've spoken about that this week in camp. Last time they were at home was that Ireland game. It feels ages ago now. And it was their best performance we've seen from an England team for years. And I just wonder, being back at home, continuing to develop. There are question marks there with the coaching changes and everything. I get that, and injuries and whatnot. But there's part of me that just fancies England, which maybe is the kiss of death, and now New Zealand will go and do the job. Either way, I think we're going to get a great test match. So, comment section, let me know anything really ahead of the game, the stuff on the Haka, on England, on New Zealand, on this game. How do you see it playing out, and who do you think is going to win it? Like the video whilst you're here, I'd really appreciate that. And hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Appreciate you watching. See you in the next one.